Hello out there, Foxes fans, and welcome back to another edition of the U.S. Foxes podcast. Coming to you live, as always, from various parts of the United States. As always, I'm your host, Matt Folks, joined by my co-hosts, Mr. Chris Warner up in San Diego as well, Mr. Jason Becker in New York City, and Mr. Jim Harris down in Houston. Boys, I usually run these things, and I got to be honest with you. First of all, apologies to our listeners for coming a little late this week, and we appreciate you waiting and holding on for us. But I am in such a bad mood still, 3 days removed from this thing, that I'm hoping you boys are going to say things that are going to make me feel a little bit better. Chris, we'll start with you, bud. How have you been handling this?
They say time's a healer, Matt. I feel less angry than I think I did that first 24 hours, like pretty much all Leicester fans. But going back and occasionally just seeing on your social media feed a couple of the incidents that I think we'll talk about today just really infuriates me again. I remember back in the 90s when we used to say it was Fergie time at Old Trafford. He'd look at his watch and all of a sudden it'd be 10 minutes. It just felt like, again, that we've got the new, was it Ten Hag time or whatever we want to call it, where we were just going to get screwed by VAR. So no, I'm equally frustrated, mate. I thought we're going into that game positive, upbeat. You listened to how we talked last week, and it just felt like the game was taken away from us through those two decisions.
I'm glad time heals all wounds for you, because for me, it has done the opposite. It has just been a hot poker shoved into an orifice on me, an angry orifice. Jason, how about you, dude?
Well, I don't know what I can make you feel, about the game, but you do look like you need a little cheering up, and I can't quite see because of the blue bar there. But is that a Damari Grayson hoodie?
It is, yeah.
It is. I gotta say,
Yeah,
it looks fantastic, and not something that I would be able to pull off, but you can do it, man. It looks fresh.
For those of you that aren't watching live, it is not a actual hoodie with Damari Grayson's face on it, but just to clear that up.
But I just, thought I'd just send that little compliment your way. Maybe lift your spirits.
Love you, buddy. You're always good for my confidence. Jimmy, how about you, dude?
I'm slowly getting over it. I was chatting to Chris earlier, and I thought I had got over it, and I started rewatching the game again, and literally just before we started recording was the 42nd minute or 41st minute, and my knee is still hurting from Sunday, so I don't know about Wild Fasters.
Well, that's one thing we will definitely get into. Let's dive right into the match, boys. Old Trafford away. In the recent history of Leicester City, actually not been that terrible of a venue for us to play. Boys head in, as you were saying, Jason, so confidently, with, playing the best football that we've played all season. Iheanacho's in incredible form. New signings are playing left and right. And guys, the match starts off much the way that we thought and hoped that it might. We come out flying, the same team that we have been seeing. We looked like a team that was making Man United extremely uncomfortable, all over the pitch. Chris, I guess give your thoughts when we started watching that at the Bluefoot together, and just seeing the guys fly around. And I mean, how high was your confidence, say, after minute 20?
Yeah, well, I think it was a roller coaster the first 20 minutes. I mean, me and Jim were talking about it beforehand, but that first 5 minutes, United absolutely battered us. And it felt like we needed to get out of our own, just get out of that and survive it. And as we did that, we started to come into the game. And yeah, we had chances, mate. That first 20 minutes, there was Barnes, the Iheanacho header with De Gea with an incredible save to put that out. We played fluid football. We were fast. We were aggressive. We kind of continued that momentum from the Tottenham game. And you kind of felt like it was coming. And I think it just, again, reiterates what we've said, that, like, given those situations, we've got to be ruthless and we've got to pounce, because if we don't do that, then it will cost us. And I think that's what happened.
that initial 5 minutes of uncomfortableness, Jason, led to, quite the display. Your thoughts on the initial beginnings of the match?
Yeah, when you go to a place like Old Trafford against a team like this season's Man United, you need to just make sure that you survive, right? That initial onslaught. They're going to come out on the front foot, but we did a really good job of just flipping the game around, pressing really high up the pitch, getting those fullbacks bombing up the pitch. Castagna was getting up so far, getting into really threatening positions. Him and Tete were working well together. Barnes was flying. We were pressing really well, like as a unit, making Man United just like super uncomfortable, and it led to quality chances. But I think, with as well as we were playing, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I kind of kept turning around to everyone that I was watching with in New York and just saying, "Oh man, if you don't take these chances now, it's going to come back and bite us in the ass."
Jim, you kind of in the same vehicle with all of us on that?
Yes. Yeah. First 5 minutes was worrying. It looked like all the good stuff we'd done the last couple of weeks could be undone, and Man U were up for it. But then we held on. I think that was the most important thing. And it was just kind of grinding away and then just keeping the ball. And I remember watching the commentary and sort of saying, they made a comment about, look, we're just going to now get used to having the ball again. And I felt like that was what we did for like a minute or two. And then we were able to start building that momentum. The other chance that I think wasn't as clear cut, the Harvey Barnes one, it was just put your foot through it. And I think he was just a little bit behind him after his first touch. So he couldn't get the power. And so he also couldn't get the direction either side of De Gea. It was a wonderful save, obviously. And then Maddison put Iheanacho through as well. And he sort of touched it, had a bad touch, took it wide, and then the chance was gone and he kind of fell over when he had the shot. And then obviously we had the first sighting of Harry Suter from a corner where he kind of had a header over the bar. And I was like, oh, this is going to be spicy and we could get something from this. Then the wonderful save from that header, like Jason said, Tete was very, very quiet and he let Luke Shaw sort of maraud for the first 5-6 minutes. And then obviously someone said something and it clicked back and then we were attacking into that space. So yeah, it was like really positive. And I think the first 24.5 minutes, from the first 5 minutes in to the 24.5 minute, we controlled the game. And I don't know if I can talk about the goal. I can let someone else talk about it. But I feel like actually because we were doing so well, that's what led to them scoring, because it was a lapse in concentration from our boy Wout Faes, who just took a terrible first touch. And then I don't know what he was doing with that pass or whatever it was. And it just let them in, and then he tried to make up for his mistake, and you can't do that and leave Rashford like 30 yards to run into.
Yeah, we've spoke about how for the potency of our offense. We've spoke about the the defense being the real question mark. Jason, talk about that goal.
Yeah, well, I think leading up to that game, that was the area that we talked about, right? That space in behind our, but in that area, in that left side, like where Rashford could run in, the space that our fullbacks would leave behind, and that's exactly where he found himself, and we just kind of made a mess of that play, and Faes, I like him a lot. I think he's aggressive. He plays on the front foot. He tries to make plays. Sometimes that's going to burn you, and it certainly did there. And he, like Jim said, tried to make up for that error, and then just in a rash moment, no pun intended, didn't look around to see that Mark, that the best goal scorer in Europe right now was going to be wide open. And I know Danny Ward gets a lot of flack for how he's been this season and the amount of goals that we've let in, but don't really think there was much he could do there. Rashford's charging it on you, home free. There was another runner in the middle of the pitch too, and it was a tidy finish, but as soon as Rashford got the ball in that space, we all knew there was only one outcome there, and that was going to be 1-0 to United.
Yeah, I can't give Marcus Rashford that. If we're talking about a Richarlison or something, you can get away with that. And Danny can only make himself so big, Chris. I guess your view of that goal.
Echo the boys' comments. I think it's one of those tough situations because I think, but like we talked about before that, we were playing quite nicely out the back. We were spreading the ball about, and of course they're going to have confidence. Those two centre halves are, and what is the one thing that's often quite detrimental is a confident centre half, and it was a crap first touch. I agree with Jason. I don't know what he's doing for the second one at that point. Put it over the stand, but I think we had trouble as a bigger picture. I think one of the great things that Rashford does nowadays is he doesn't just sit out wide. He very much plays through the middle, and I think we struggled a lot during that game with his movement across the line, especially for the second goal as well, where he was out on the left, I think it was. So I think we struggled a lot in that sense. But yeah, just one of those mistakes, Matt. And I think that was kind of an antithesis of the entire game was just a little mistake on our end was just capitalized by United every time.
Yeah, and I think too, it came at a time when we were really we had the foot on the gas, and you could almost kind of see the guys. It was such. If anybody else, like I said, but you see Marcus Rashford away on that, what's going to happen. So it was almost just like, shit. All right, let's regroup and get going. Unfortunately, for us, and we didn't know this going into the match, but we were actually going to be playing 12 people instead of the normal 11 that we normally place because Stuart Atwell decided to start influencing the game after that. We go into halftime 1-0. Anything else you guys want to touch on that besides? I mean, really the key points for that first half for me are De Gea saving their ass and defensive lapses, Jason.
Well, yeah. Also, Dallo had a chance that he really should have scored.
True, yeah.
We screwed up, and again, it was kind of a lapse along our left side of defense, and I don't know how he missed that. It could have easily been another goal for Man United there, but I think it kind of summed up. Before we get into sort of the controversies in the game, we know how to attack. Like when we have all of our players on the pitch, when we can play our choice 11, there's no doubt that this Leicester team can create chances and make goals happen. It just, De Gea played great and just the ball just wasn't going in the net for us. But we still, leave a lot to be desired in the back. Spurs we played well defensively against Spurs. I'll give that to the boys. But against Villa, Villa could have easily gotten more than 2 goals. And it just kind of shows this has kind of been a running theme over the last couple of years. No matter how good we are going forward, we're always liable to kind of give something away in the back.
Well summarized, Chris. Any other touches before we dive into this? No.
Go on, Matt. All yours, mate.
Well,
take it over.
I think we come out and for that first half, their missed chances, our missed chances, they saves. I think that we are still 100% in this match, and I don't know if. I hate doing this, and I hate that the fucking league keeps putting me in a position to have to put on a tinfoil hat. But dude, how you can look at that second half of football and not put on a tinfoil hat, I really, really struggle. Jason, what do you think, bud?
Well, it goes back before the second half, right? With that, with Sabitzer's studs
Yeah,
on Wafatz's knee towards the end of the first half.
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, well, if there's, I guess, a moral victory there for us, it's that pretty much every neutral who watched that game agreed that should have been a red card.
And non-neutrals. Gary Neville said it was a red card.
Gary Neville, I mean, and even some of the pundits in the UK who are known for backing referee decisions or a bit of a big six bias. The sport talking heads too. I mean, it was pretty unanimous that most folks felt that should have been a red card. I think it should have been. You don't need a whole lot of force to damage someone's knee when someone's standing up, and it just usually when we look at these VAR decisions, they're played in super slow-mo, which I think it made it look even worse. It was bad, and I think they missed that one. Now, there's the old meme that goes around like VAR, checking club badge, and I do think that most of us feel like if that were maybe, I don't know, Dewsbury Hall putting his studs on a United player's leg there, that it would probably have been a red card. I think what we're seeing and is just I won't go so far as to say there's a conspiracy. I think what we're seeing is just constant incompetence, and guys who just have not been able to keep up with the quality and the pace of play. And we have a really weird system, or the Premier League has a really weird system where the guys who are not very good at making decisions on the pitch are also the ones now looking at a monitor and trying to make decisions there. And we've seen how much of a debacle it's been. Just last week, they forgot to put lines on for an offside check in the Arsenal game. It's an absolute mess. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not good at their jobs. And we have, poor performers kind of overseeing poor performers. And it just leads to just awful decisions. And it's happening like every week. And not only that, they don't even know really what the rules are and how to apply them. And they're constantly changing the rules. So I don't know. I'll hear anyone out if they want to, say there's some corruption here. I'm at the point, man, where I just think they just suck. I just think they're terrible. They don't know what the hell they're doing.
It's interesting because there's kind of a dichotomy right here with the NFL and how bad some of the NFL decisions we saw this year, and lots of calls for the NFL refs deciding outcomes. So to see the way that they're handled, we saw the head of VAR. Was he the head, or he was just a VAR ref? He was disciplined. Now he's gone. We saw that earlier this week. So it does appear that they're trying to fix it. But I don't know how you can look at that challenge there from an objective standpoint and then go ahead and watch the perfect Mendy challenge that becomes a yellow because it's Marcus Rashford. So maybe conspiracy isn't the right word, but there's a fucking word there for it somewhere that I'm just struggling for by it. Chris, what are your thoughts on this? Because when it's that black and white, we have photos of Atwell staring at the knee, at it happening. He doesn't even give a caution. He gives nothing. And then, we watch the Mendy perfect challenge, then get it, that much later.
Yeah, 100%. Firstly, 100% agree with Jason. I think this stems from just incompetence throughout the league. I think if you ask every fan across the US of every Premier League team, they'll give you 5 similar, not the same, but similar instances this year where VAR has done them in. Regarding the differences, I think there's 2 questions here. And I think the Premier League just does an awful job in communicating the processes. There was stuff leaking out at half-time about, Atwell, they thought it might be a yellow card, but they can't give a yellow card, and therefore they can't do anything. Like, firstly, we need to know whether or not the ref saw it. Yeah. Secondly, from that point, that's when the mechanism of VAR kicks in, because if he didn't see it, then he's got to go to the screen and have a look. You can't, with a tackle like Jason said, above the knee, with his side profile, it looks like, just looking at it, it looks like he's trying to stamp down on the ball. And I don't think he deliberately went for that. For fast in any way, but just the demeanor of the way that he's on his side profile, you've got to go see it. Now, if Atwell did see it, then Matt, to your point, again, I think it's just incompetence by the Premier League referee in that instance. But just a shocking decision, absolutely shocking. And I've heard this story about this notion of intent, and maybe it was soft, and it just absolute rubbish. I mean, and he's above the knee. He's coming down at his knee. This is career-ending injuries happen because of tackles like that. So you can't tell me he just tapped him and let his foot go. No, we need to eliminate those challenges from the game. There's career enders. And just fuming when that happened, mate. We were together and we just couldn't understand it at all, could we?
Yeah, and what compounds it and makes it so much more frustrating is when the league, in response, is just like, sorry about it. It's nothing here to see, Jim. Your thoughts?
Look, I think I can't disagree with anything that my friends have said, but at minimum, it's a yellow for dangerous play. Like, I don't care what, red, whatever. But to not have anything for that, it was ridiculous. I think Jason's right. I think the word, Matt, you're looking for is incompetence, where it is just people who are not able to do the job that they are hired to do. And we've seen a couple of the better referees leave the league in the last couple of years, and I think there's not been the talent to come through. Think about the guy who was on VAR duty the other week, and he's now like off VAR, and he's not even the Premier League anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was speaking of.
But where do you backfill them from if there's no one else who's got that level of skill? I haven't noticed Stuart Atwell being terrible before this game. Obviously, I've not forensically watched him to think about every decision he's made. I think the frustrating thing was, nothing was done. He didn't go look at the monitor, as Chris said. He didn't he just took the word of the fourth official, and that was it, right? He just basically carried on with the game. I think whether it was also because it's right before halftime, he trusts Paul Tierney, because Paul Tierney is one of the more experienced referees as well. So, but if it's not even, maybe they just said, look, hey, you know what, dude, it's a yellow card. There's no point you going to look. You can't, under the way that VAR is today, you can't do anything. We can't do anything. But I think it'd be nice for them to come out and say, you know what, we made a mistake. That was not necessarily the referee, because we know that they don't come and do that. But the referees association say, look, this was a mistake. We've talked about it. There's a lessons learned. We studied it. We think it's crappy as well that we're not allowed to kind of do, they can't go crazy and say every foul is a VAR and a yellow card, because we're going to have millions of, but things like that, where it's dangerous play, where it's clearly on the bordering of reckless. I think I got into sort of talking on Twitter with a few people like, well, he's not gone in with intent. He didn't mean it. It's that doesn't matter. Dangerous play and recklessness don't have intent behind them. So that's the frustrating thing. Maybe it was we'll get in. It's right before halftime. That's just that, to quote, Shaun of the Dead, let's all have a cup of tea and hope this blows over. And then, we come out and Rashford's second goal, the line drawing on the diagonal line drawing is kind of more frustrating. We feel hard done by, you talked about Papi Mendy. I don't want this to I don't know if you guys want this to be a podcast about refereeing decisions. I don't really want to.
The league,
Because-
they give us no choice, Jim.
Yeah.
With refereeing this fucking shitty, you have no choice but to spend 15 minutes now talking about Stuart Atwell. Like, it's just insane, dude.
But I think the biggest thing that I sort of saw was clearly at halftime that had sort of, like, they talked about that. And there was two ways it could go. Like, they'd be pumped up or they kind of felt a bit hard done by. And I think we were semi-pumped up and we kind of just started squeezing. And unfortunately, that caused a huge, like, think about the first goal and how much room Rashford had, but that was from a mistake. The second goal was us trying to, like, squeeze them back in their own half. They changed their formation at halftime as well, completely. You know, they put Rashford on the left because I think the reason they did that was because I felt like Garnacho was playing pretty well on the left. But I think the thing was they saw like, oh, we are getting pushed down our left backside because Castaña's pushing forward. He's an attacking fullback. So, like, how do we pin him back? We put Rashford on the left. I think Fernandes had, like, I don't like Bruno Fernandes at all, or Bruno Fernandes, depending on who you listen to. But he had a phenomenal game, and he didn't roll around on the ground as much. But he was playing like on the right wing, and then, you know, looking at where Sancho came and he kind of was floating. And I think that was really, really good tactical change that they saw. We've got to chase. We're going to kind of go be reckless. We're going to have to win the ball back and do something. Let's put Rashford in the spot where they're vacating. And it paid off for their second goal. And I think, and then the third goal, you know, that was again, you know, Wout Fast getting turned around like a nut job, right? But we then tried to try and get back in it. And I think the thing is for me, and this is why I didn't want to talk about the ref, I think we're going to have I think there might be a response on Saturday because I think we'll feel hard done by. There's some things we can learn from in the way that we defend that we should start cutting out. And if we keep playing forwards like we have been, that to me is something we can take away as a positive from this game and this like debacle where a referee decision turned it, and then we got punished after that. Is how I feel last game went.
Yeah, it was. You could see there were clearly two different kind of team talks at halftime. United really came out and looked like a much better side. Later on in the half, Mendy gets his yellow card. You can see how much that impacted how he was playing. He was very afraid to go on for a tackle. There were United folks at the bar with us watching, and every single one of them could not be convinced that Rashford was onside. They even felt like he was clearly offside. I mean, where they drew the line on Foss, it just
it
was
on the outside of his arm, not on the armpit, which is the law, VAR.
And
it wasn't, and the angle, like, obviously we know there's more than one camera that we see on TV because we've been to the ground and we've seen there's maybe 30 cameras or something for VAR, right? And so they must have seen something different from us. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I was gonna say, well, the Premier League gets into that, right? They like in their like rules page and they talk about VAR. They use an example in the Spurs game, and it's like, well, you know, the camera angles aren't always, you know, don't always. They can be misleading. And for example, here Eric Dyer's knee head looks like it's closer to the goal, his knee, but then when you actually look at the photo, it's like, no, actually his knee is clearly close to the goal. So I don't even know what the hell they're seeing in the example that they're using to kind of clear this up for everyone. So who is drawing these lines, right? Do we have some kind of graphic designer or geometry whiz, or is it just another freaking random person sitting there? Is it the referee? Like, who's doing this?
I think it is the officials in the.
And so Yeah. So and this
So
is again, guys, compounding my point. Go ahead, Jason. Finish your point.
I was going to say, if they're the ones doing that, it reminds me. There was a story that was like in New York when LASIK came out. There was this eye doctor's practice got in trouble because the guy was he was training garbage men to kind of do LASIK so he could do more procedures and rake in the money. And I'm sorry, these guys are not even probably writing down the wrong numbers half the time when they're giving out on their yellow cards. And now we're expecting them to kind of triangulate these plays and draw these lines like they're like I don't know, working for the U.S. Air Force and like doing like what are we doing here?
Right, and that's
like what the hell are we doing?
That's where I almost like just skipped because it was so egregious, dude. Like the Sabitzer thing, whatever. It's you can say, you know, it's his opinion or whatever. When they're fucking drawing lines, bro, and we can see in the bar in San Diego, California, we're watching a TV and we see this all happening, and it like almost happened in slow motion. It felt like the way the decision came down because it's called offsides, and then there's that lull where it's like, why aren't we? What's going on? What? And then it says they're going in. I knew immediately. It was like Rashford getting in on the first goal. I knew it was going to be a fucking goal.
He didn't even protest. He was waving his finger. No, usually guys are waving it. He was telling his teammates like, no, it's not a goal.
Yeah.
He knew it was offside.
But when we're watching on, not even, I mean, love the Bluefoot, not the best TV. So, but it's so clear though that you can see a green line that is thinner up top, and as it gets down, it gets thicker. That to me is. There's nothing else to call that.
Well, Matt, you forget about the pixelated zoom in moment. I don't know if you guys caught that at one point they like zoomed right into Faust's shoulder and it was just this pixelated blur trying to figure out, where do we draw the line down to try and figure out where his actual shoulder is.
That's why, you know, and I said the tinfoil and people say, oh, you're nuts, whatever. It's like, this is the biggest league on earth. They have more money than any league on earth. You can't tell me that they couldn't fix this with a camera that I've seen them. They have them that run like sideline, the entire length of the sideline, and it can track the last person and they can run with it. The fact that is not there leads you to, well, why isn't that there? Because they want to use VAR for match fixing. They want to use VAR for helping the bigger clubs. That's when these questions arise, when the technology exists to get it fucking right. But instead, you're going to insult us by drawing a line. And then even deeper in the week, we had a guy that's a professional Photoshop guy take it and put it through the Adobe Photoshop. They have a thing that literally the computer breaks down lines and shows you how even, and shows clearly that they widened the line to fit the narrative that he was onside. And that's where you look at things like that, and somebody be the voice of reason here to try to, if any of you can be, because it was one of the most corrupt, awful things I've ever seen in the history of sports, in my opinion. That was disgusting. It was black and white in front of us, and they still slap us in the face with it.
I don't know if this will make you feel better, but I do think that we've been on the wrong side of worse decisions.
Yeah,
for sure. And
we benefited from some decisions as well.
We have, and totally fair. But I'm saying to then not show it. By the way, how many times do we see that VAR thing where then they show it like 3 times to show, oh yes, they were right. They don't show it again. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you just reminded me. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna forget to say it though. But I watched the extended highlights, and I mean the Sabitzer studs on Watt's knee are not in the official extended highlights, like, which is, I think,
well,
such a key moment in the game.
The key word is extended highlight.
I've seen, I've noticed that before, Jason, that there's stuff like disallowed goals occasionally don't make it as well. Yeah. And I think it's because, I wonder if it's just someone at NBC who just doesn't really watch football. and they're just like, oh well, it's just the goals and the shots and the exciting stuff. Let's just put them in. Like I pulled up the stats on the VAR though, and I've got a couple of points on that. So the team the most hard done by VAR, this is like ESPN are tracking it, is Brighton, and they're like 6 goals worse potentially, or their net scored and net decisions. We are -1. Man United are +1, so clearly they should be +2 or 3 right now. But Man City are bottom of the league in decisions made as well. And you've got Brentford, Fulham, Liverpool, Newcastle, Villa up top. But I think the other thing is on this, I think we've spoken and we've heard, watching sort of just the Premier League since the restart, we've heard about VAR more in the when did we start? 2 months ago. So just on Boxing Day, right? We've heard more about VAR decisions being shit than in the entire World Cup.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've always said is, the officiating in the Premier League is way better than the rest of Europe. It's way better than
I don't think I've ever
because you
said
have all
that.
these random people, you have all these random referees who just, don't do it. No offense to them. Probably I did offend them, so take that back. You have all these referees, that aren't in the big leagues. Can they handle the pressure when they're refereeing? And like, it wasn't as disruptive. It didn't ruin the World Cup. Other things ruined the World Cup for the non-playing stuff. But that to me is like, to your point, Matt, we have it's the richest league in the world. It's can afford the technology. It's the decisions that are being made are, apart from pretty much the Champions League, the World Cup and the European Championships, are probably the most expensive, probably more money than the World Cup and the international games that this hinges on. What's the prize money per position? Like, is it £10 million per position or something like that?
Yeah, I don't think the difference between position is that high. I think it's closer to like between 1 and 2.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, that makes more sense. But I think like this is putting people in. This is ruining like positions. It could be in and out of Europe. It could be in and out of relegation. Let's say we go on. If we go on a run and we get in the bottom 3, that's probably on us from now till the end of the season. But if we don't stay up by, I don't think this is the game, actually. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to go down the through. I think, like, apart from those decisions, we got our butts kicked a bit.
Definitely.
Yeah,
go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I was just going to echo Jim's point. You think about the World Cup. Who's in charge of referees at the World Cup? Pierluigi Collina, often probably considered and voted the best referee of pretty much recent history. Who we got in charge of VAR? We had Mike Riley, and now we got Mike Dean. Probably 2 of the referees that, if you ask anybody who's a fan of the Premier League, would consider are probably down there in the bottom 5 of the decision-making processes when they're out on the pitch. So to Jim's point, I think the problem with VAR starts right at the top of it in terms of who's running it, who's defining what procedures are in place. And then to your point, Jason, as well, like where is the responsibility and accountability for those actions of, I know it sounds daft, but drawing a line and all that sort of stuff. Like, in order for it to be accepted by fans, it does feel like there's got to be more transparency that comes in, because this season, like Jim said, this World Cup, since the World Cup, it's been shocking.
Yeah. I don't, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but don't you think that further proves, why don't they want it to be transparent? Why don't they say, here's a 15-minute video on what happens in the VAR room? It would be so easy to produce and explain, but they don't do that shit, Jason. And it's like, why not?
They're so slow on the uptake and kind of react. So we have like this weird thing where it's like we've got these like a bunch of jobs worths that don't, but also who just don't understand their jobs, which is like the worst combination, right? Sticklers for rules who don't really understand the rule, like who don't know what they're doing, and they're going to change the rule. Like it's just a complete mess. Historically, British referees, I think, have had too much influence on worldwide refereeing. It's good to see that, in this World Cup it wasn't as big of a problem. They didn't have as much pull, but it's I don't think the league wants to admit that they have a problem, because it's going to take too long to get qualified folks in those roles. So they're going to just kind of pretend that everything is okay. And they're not going to make changes that are going to matter and improve the quality of the refereeing. And unfortunately, everyone watching this league can see that there's a gap. There's a gap between the quality of play and who's kind of running the games.
Well, we also have the most arrogant referee ever running VAR now. To Chris's point, like, the guy couldn't admit he made a mistake if he wrote down 2 + 2 = 5. He would argue that he was correct. So I think that is, to both Chris and Jason's point, that's not the attitude you need. Think about any other walk of life, where, like, in business or in this sort of industry, you think about how well you perform and you take on the feedback and you adjust accordingly, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for me, that I guess they can hide behind we're not allowed to change things mid-season, and we're not allowed to do it because it's unfair on what happened before, and then it changes it for going forward. But to at least kind of say, this was a mistake or whatever, that this is why this decision was made, not made, would be great, I think.
Right.
And it seemed like the players didn't really understand, like you said, Jason. Like, Rashford you kind of thought he was offside, I think.
Yeah, and I think there was, I don't know, I got the sense that a lot of our players were like, screw it, let's just cut our losses here. Let's get through this game. Nobody gets injured, and move on to Arsenal. Like, this, we're not going to get anything out of this. So why even bother? Why even try?
They're literally taking a page out of we bring it back to the NFL again, Roger Goodell's playbook here. That we watched that Chiefs-Bengals game. The Chiefs get a free third down. And literally on Twitter, NFL is fixed is trending. There are so many people saying the NFL is fixed. This is clearly, matchmaking, or match fixing, game fixing, whatever. And the NFL's response, Roger Goodell was asked about, in the year-end, the Pro Bowl press conference, he said, "Are you at all concerned that your refereeing quality is so piss poor that this was trending? People are saying that the league is fixed." And he said, no, we think they did the best job they've ever done. This is the best refereeing season of all time for the NFL. That's literally what he said. So it's the same attitude with the Prem, where it's like, do something about it. There's nothing you can do about it, so fuck off. And I think that's where the frustration stems from, Chris.
Yeah, totally. Although, to go full circle and bring this back to the game, especially talking about, I just want to talk quickly about the third goal as well. I don't think it's a foul. I know Tielemans was all over the ref after the third goal, but I don't think it's a foul. I think that's more Yuri trying to cover himself for an awful decision to try and play it out like that, without the communication of man on or man behind or anything like that. I think you're always going to get the center. You're always going to get someone nip in for there. So yeah, I think 2 bad decisions. The third one, I think, was more of just a self-inflicted mistake on our part versus it being anything referee based.
Do you think the foul on Iheanacho was a foul though that was earlier?
Yeah,
No.
the one earlier, I think you could give a foul.
The one where Iheanacho had the defender on his back and misplayed the ball with his back, around midfield. That was never a foul. He miscontrolled the ball and he tried to buy one. That's what I thought.
That's fair enough. I thought it could have gone either way. I think the big thing is that's cost us is once again individual mistakes and lack of concentration. And unfortunately, Mr. Fast is a big prime suspect on that. I think I want to kind of talk about a couple of positives that I thought that Harry Suter played pretty well. And I think he had to kind of cover a lot of the back line. He was the one that I think gave us the solidity when Man United were all over us at the start. And I've been pretty impressed with him. I think Mendy showed during the start. I don't think he had a spectacular game, but I think he did the basics right. I think Dewsbury Hall, as Jason said, was also very good defensively. I think there was a couple of moments when I just remember shouting at him and like, use your right foot, please, because he did his usual, especially as he's playing on the right of the two center mids. I still don't understand why he's the right center mid and Papi is the left center mid. Like, just switch them, please, because then they can play to their strengths. I thought Maddison played, like, when he started getting into it, he played pretty well too. And I thought it was one of Castagna's better games, certainly for the first half. Like, others, meh, all right. Danny Ward didn't have a chance, I don't think, with anything. And what he did, and then I think it was also a game of two managers to me. Ten Hag, to Jason's point, he went in at halftime and guys were 1-0 up. We're probably quite lucky that we're winning. But I've seen this, and this. Let's go for it. They're going to be like sloppy and let's just kill this game off. And they just did that. It was like, boom. That was, to me, surgical for the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then what could we do? I thought our subs were pretty ineffectual. I think Booba just looked like we'd got him from the stands the way he came and played. It's like, dude, you've been back, you're not fit clearly, but you can remember how to play football. Yori's just lightweight. And I think there's maybe a discussion on does he get back in the team if he's back fit? I don't think he does. I think Mendy and KDH are our centre mids for Saturday because I'm really worried about holding it together. So I think there's a few positives. I think we just got to try and spend this week getting people to concentrate and think through what they're doing. And this it's going to sound weird, but Wout Fast looks like David Luiz. But I think he's trying to play like David Luiz, but he's not as good. Some of the touches when he's just sort of jogging around and sort of traps it. That's what we conceded the first goal for. He nearly gave the ball away a second, before the goal as well, where he underhit a pass because he was lackadaisical. So I think someone's just got to say, dude, you're a good player. You've got all these things that are good for you. Don't do these things. It's not a case of do more. It's a case of do less for him, I think.
What were your thoughts, Jim? You're going down the line, and you missed a name that I was really curious the most from all of you guys, Iheanacho, and his performance. We talked about his tendency, when he's hot, look out. But then he'll have a hot game, and then a stinker. Do you think this was break down Nacho's performance?
I think he got worse. I think he started kind of like he had finished the last couple of games, but then his touch left him. And we joked about this, and sometimes he looks like he could, he couldn't trap he's playing with a beach ball, right? The way the ball bounced off him, when I asked her, did you think it was a foul? No, he controlled it and it went 5 feet away from him, right? I think what we saw is that when Maddison put him through and he took that touch and it took him wide, I was just screaming out, hit it, dude, just hit it. The form you're in, especially after Barnes had been clean through. So I think he starts because, unfortunately, once again, and I'm, for those watching, wearing my Jamie Vardy t-shirt today, he came on and didn't really do anything again. And apart from point a lot and sort of, run around like blocking people like passing lanes, but at that point the game was gone anyway. So I think like if Daka's fit and you're 3-0 down, just like get him a run out and go for it. But yeah, I think, Matt, I would stick with the same team for Saturday, to be honest. A, for like the building some rhythm and momentum, and B, I don't feel like what I've seen, like I think we need a Mendy to be in there to stop the Arsenal team coming through the middle again. I don't know, Jason's looking like I'm going to win some money from him because his cards are not very good.
I just miss Prime Ndidi.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, that's what I think that's what we need in the middle of the pitch if we're going to actually break up play and stop play. But it's been a while since we've seen that. But for me, that's the kind of missing piece in this lineup. Can get Madison playing further up the pitch. Just gives that extra bit of security for the back line as well. So I don't know, praying for a miracle that suddenly something touches Ndidi and kind of brings him back in time to what he was a couple of years ago.
To when Real Madrid were sniffing around him and other giants of Europe.
Otherwise, that's like apart from maybe securing Tete or a good right winger, I think that's the obviously a goalie. I think we can go into that one, but we need a midfielder who can break up play and tackle but be progressive. Yeah, I totally agree, Jason. I didn't have him in my list of people to start on Saturday because he's not. He's not there.
Yeah, we need 25 getting back into his old form. So I guess, guys, in summary, we all agree that we played pretty shitty at times and could have played better and did not take the chances that we should have taken. But then also we're in agreements that it was also compounded by some just awful refereeing. Some of us think maybe it was intentional. Some of us, obviously, I think 3 of you are much more sane than I am on that level. Which I'll admit it. So yeah, disappointing. But on we move to another huge match. Arsenal on Saturday, 7 a.m. on the West Coast time. So we get another hour of sleep there. Chris, I'll start with you. Do we lick our wounds and come back, or do we have our head still hanging low from that result? What do you think is going to turn out on Saturday?
So I expect a response. I think we'll get a response. I think that it'll be tough. Arsenal top of the league for a reason. They've been very, very, very good this year. Some of the signings they've made have been exceptional, and what they've done really well is they've found, or they've been able to get players in who, if they've had an injury or run of form, they've got somebody in. I think Nketiah is going to give us nightmares if we're not careful. I'm a little bit worried, to Jim and Jason's point, about the midfield and the potential for us to be overrun there really quickly. But I do think if we can get the ball up the other end of the pitch, we'll give them a game. I mean, you think back to earlier this season, Matt, when we were surrounded by Arsenal fans at the Bluefoot, and it was a pretty entertaining game. We did stuff, we had chances, it was back and forth for a while. We weren't afraid of them, which I thought was refreshing. So, yeah, I expect us to rally and have a performance. And I think one thing as well is that I expect the KP to be loud again. I think bring some momentum from the Tottenham game. The fans will get back into it. And so, yeah, Matt, I'm expecting us to at least give it a go. I don't think we'll just fall over and kind of just lay down for them. I expect us to give it a go.
God bless your sweet, positive face. Jason, your thoughts going into Saturday?
I don't think we have a choice but to go and give it a go. Got the 3 points against Spurs. It was a little bit of a bonus. So now any other points out of this, gauntlet of fixtures is, a bonus, I think, before we really, really need to kind of pick up those wins and make sure we're safe from relegation. So, yeah, why not? Arsenal can be beat. Didn't look amazing against Villa. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't, a game that we should definitely lose. I think there are points to be had in the game. I just, we expect a response, but over the last couple of seasons, those games, right, where we've thought, okay, well, this is where when they show up, these boys they definitely have a chip on their shoulder. They're going to be mad about the last week and what happened. This is a big game. We've thought that so many times over the last few years and not seen the team kind of come out with any sense of urgency. So really hoping that there is a feeling of maybe injustice in the locker room and on the training ground this week, and that the guys kind of take it all out on Arsenal.
With you on that note, real quick, I don't want to jump back into it, but Jason, what were you? I know we had spoke after the match, and you said that you were hoping Brendan was going to come out and really give it to the officials and say just what a shit show this was. What were your thoughts on the lack thereof of Brendan? I mean, what your thoughts on Brendan's how he handled that situation?
I don't know. I think that's just what we're going to get from him. I didn't really watch all of his comments, so if I missed anything, my bad to all the listeners and to you guys. I think he did say, though, like, hey, look, that's clearly a red card. I don't know what the hell they're looking at. So at least he went out and did that. This is one of those things where you kind of can get a lot more of this from being at the game. I didn't get the sense that he was really, going after the refs much. I mean, that walk into the tunnel at halftime would have been a really good opportunity to give him a peace of mind and actually show his team that, like, hey, look, I'm out here fighting for you guys too. So if he did do that, good for him. I guess it didn't have the impact that he was hoping for if he did, but I don't think that any of that went on.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It just seemed like kind of a lukewarm response. Jim?
He doesn't tend to put it out there a lot, though, really, does he? Yeah. Which is a frustration I think we all have of him, because I think it is just, we see other managers go do it, right?
What do you think, Jesse? Say what you will about Jesse Marsh. I guarantee he'd have handled that situation much damn differently had that been him out there.
Yeah, but
it probably also gotten us clinched in the relegation zone also.
True.
Yeah, exactly. True. I think I kind of gave my thoughts a little bit on the next game already. I worry. I think Arsenal are going to be. I'm worried about Saka.
Yeah,
that he's just like you talked about Nketiah, but Saka and Odegaard are just like the two that make them tick. I think I feel a lot more confident with Christensen as left back against Saka than if we had Luke Thomas, who or whoever. So I think that's a positive. Just kind of watching the Arsenal game against Villa, they were a lot more counter-attacking. I think I don't know how much they'll press, especially away from home, or whether they'll kind of let us try and make a mistake and take the game to them. I remember we talked before this series of games. I don't know how many points we predicted out of these 4 games. I think we said maybe like, hey, if we get 3 or 4, we'll probably be happy. Yeah. And we've got 6. So it's free hit against the top of the league team. Maybe what we can do is beat them and then celebrate like we won the league. That would be a fun little thing to do, wouldn't it?
That would be awesome.
Who would do that? Who would celebrate like they won the league? So yeah, that's an interesting. It's going to be a good game to watch, I think, and I'm hoping we are on the happy end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I'm stoked for it. And to your point, if I'd have told you back then that we were going to get 6 points out of that run, I think we all would have ripped your arm off. The other good news, take it as well, but when it comes time for crunch time, we're going to have a lot of these bigger club matches out of our way, and it's going to be us versus all of the fuckers that we're fighting against down there. And so I do like the positioning of our schedule for that reason. So I think we're all in agreement that it's really going to depend on how we come out against Arsenal. I think if we come out and we're lulling against them at all, they're just that team that is so dangerous this year that one glaring mistake, one bad Wout Foss pass, and it could be Soccer Odegaard feast season. So I think we'll know within the first 10 minutes what kind of match it's going to be. I'm looking for the guys to come out angry, hopefully be pissed off that it's us versus them mentality again. It's us versus not only the team but the league. We're not getting calls. They don't want us up here. So hopefully we can coalesce around that as a group and really use that as a springboard to put in a good performance, because I think getting a point against Arsenal at home would be massive for us in this run that we're on right now. So anything else we want to talk about before that Arsenal match, boys, before we talk about an important anniversary that today has? Great. If you are watching live, you can see Jason's background. It's a pretty famous and awesome photograph from Leicester's history. 20 years ago today, the club faced some interesting times in administration. That photo, Jason, comes from probably one of the coolest fan experiences and things that a fan might get to do about their club ever. You want to just touch and talk about the vote and all that encompassed it?
Yeah. So, a lot of folks always think about the, impossible dream at Leicester City starting in 2015. But I think it goes back a bit further. In the early 2000s, club were, was facing some really, really awful financial times. And, that was just this perfect storm of calamities that had happened. And suddenly we're faced with a Leicester City that was very close to being no more. And a group of local businessmen kind of headed by the famous Gary Lineker, stepped in, got money together, made things happen, found all the legal loopholes, and were able to kind of save the club. So a lot of them were lifelong Leicester fans who were involved. Emil Heskey also chipped in a bit while he was an active Liverpool player. But the acting chairman at the time, John Holmes, just a great character and someone who's been very good and kind to me over the years, had an idea that, this is a time for a fresh start for the club. Let's, make a push to move onwards and upwards. And he put a vote out to the fans. So a lot of folks may not realize that Leicester City haven't always been called Leicester City Football Club. The club was founded as Leicester Foss. And back in the, I guess close in 1919, around that time, they felt that they ran into some tough financial times after the First World War, and Leicester had just been granted city status, or city status, if you're on the other side of the pond. A lot of that had to do with the city's efforts, city's contributions to the war efforts, and to kind of mark the new beginnings of the club, and to celebrate Leicester's new city status. The club was kind of reformed as Leicester City Football Club. So 20 years ago today, or yesterday, if you're listening in pod format tomorrow, John Holmes had an idea to put a vote out to the fans to have the final say on whether or not to keep the name of the football club as Leicester City Football Club, or to return to our original name, Leicester Foss. and you can see they put it up to fans to vote. A C placard represented the vote for City, and an F placard represented a vote for Leicester Foss. And for those who are not watching right now, I have a background photo of fans holding up their votes. I think there's only like 2 Fs in the whole picture. The cities won it by a pretty wide margin, and the issue was kind of put to bed forever, and probably will remain that way because of all of the success that we have had since then as Leicester City Football Club.
Such a unique, cool story, and cool chapter in our club's history. Obviously cool now that we can look back on it because it turned out the way it did, and we have this wonderful club to cheer for, but could have gone a much different way, Christopher.
Oh, I was at that game, Matt. It was a whirlwind. That 2002 season was bonkers.
Oh, I see you holding up that F.
I was 100% a C guy at that point. I remember that season was bonkers. It was the first move to the Walker Stadium at that point. We got relegated the season before. Just an incredible up and down roller coaster. I think we finished second that year to Portsmouth and got straight back up. But yeah, just a whirlwind of emotions. I think you go from the highs of being up there, knowing you get back to the Premier League, and then just to the lows of looking back, thinking how close we were to it all folding.
And I think a big thing was Muzzy Izzet staying through that.
Yeah.
He basically, he was the player that got us up that season. He was by head and shoulders, and he could have left, but he didn't. And for that's why I used to wear an Izzet shirt before then, and still happy to do it. And I did get to meet him, and it was probably that I was the most excited.
Matt, as the kick connoisseur, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that the first time? Was that the season as well? We moved away from Fox Leisure.
Yeah, that was the LG kit, and
the LG kit.
I think when people are bitching about Claude Puel and different managers and stuff, it's just like I picture Mickey Adams just comes up in my head, and you look at it's just crazy. We won't stick on this, but it's just where we've come and where we are now, guys. It's really hard to complain and bitch, and believe me, I'm the number one guilty person of it. But the fact is, we are a Premier League club. We've won a Premier League, and see where we were. It's just, it never ceases to amaze me.
Chris, so you were at the game voting on the what would be the next game? So I'm wondering, what was your motivation behind your C vote, besides the fact that maybe you had a few pre-match beers and thought that it might have stood for Chris?
You know what it was, mate? And I can get this sounds ridiculous. When they were talking about the history of Leicester Foss, the first game that Leicester Foss ever played was against Syston Foss, my home little town. Yeah. They battered us 5-0. So even so at that point, I was like, you know what? No way. No way.
So what you're saying, Chris, is Matt might be holding a grudge from the weekend. You're holding a grudge from 120.
Yeah, 180 years ago.
Chris, were those were they double side? Was there a C on one side and F on the other?
I believe there were. Yeah, and I think as well they were Leicester Mercury sponsored at the time as well, or the Mercury had something to do with it as well, because obviously they had 2002. They were kind of a big thing.
I thought you were going to say, Chris, that like you couldn't get behind anything. What have the Romans ever done for us?
Yeah, Chris is a known Roman hater. That would be a really sweet piece of memorabilia. I gotta fucking say, if you got one of those, please tweet us, because I would love to see your 20-year-old sheet of paper from the vote day. That'd be pretty sick.
I do think that most of them wound up as paper airplanes and thrown on the pitch, right, Chris?
I'm not surprised.
Just to wrap it up, that was a fun season as well, because that was one of the first ever games. We played Millwall at home that year, and Millwall were banned from taking away fans because of all the trouble. So it was one of the first and only games I've ever been to where it was a sellout at the KP, and it was just Leicester fans everywhere, and that was absolutely awesome.
It's like a testimonial match.
City fan.
That's awesome, man. Well, cool. Guys, I think unless anybody else has anything else, I think it's a perfect note to end this week on a high, nice, happy note. And yeah, I think going in that there'd be nothing else more needed than heading with that attitude heading into Arsenal for us and the players for that matter. So yeah, guys, big match Saturday. Let us know where you are. Please use that hashtag US Foxes. I love hitting that retweet button and seeing y'all together and hanging out and hugging and drinking together and celebrating this little club that we all love so much. So please use the hashtag and send us those pictures of y'all hanging out, because nothing makes us happier, I guarantee it, than to see that happening around the country. On that note, thank you to those of you that faithfully listen to us every week and tell your friends to listen. The numbers just keep going up and up on the amount of people that listen to this little pod, guys. So thank you so much for that as well. And yeah, for Chris, Jason, and Jim, I'm Matt. And we will see you next time on the US Foxes podcast. Cheers, guys. See you next week.